welcome. So we will kick off this panel discussion by hearing from each organization, the context of their innovation and what makes it innovative. So I'm going to start off with Lisa and Felix. You just finished your testing your innovative solution in Uganda, and that was at the end of 2021. So if you could tell us about your innovative solution and specifically what makes it an innovative idea in the context that you were working in.
And thank you for this opportunity for Felix and I to speak about our test project in Uganda. The innovative, jumping directly into the sort of the innovative aspect of our project that Felix can speak firsthand to, as well as he was directly on the ground. There were many aspects, actually. We were trying to sort of narrow down where was the innovation, and you know, if we were to distillate it down, we would say, you know, taking an opportunity to meet a gap in both an educational but also an economic empowerment situation, where menstrual health management and education there was definitely a gap there. The taboos and the stigmas around menstrual health and hygiene, the cultural practices and the mores that were, you know, deeply embedded into the belief system, the local belief system. But then as a result, the health outcomes and the socioeconomic outcomes or the educational outcomes, all of these factors played into us in the design of coming up with designing an innovative approach to not only delivering education, but a product that would also be built on economically empowering women in the community. And, you know, that being said, wanting it, of course, to be, you know, from the premise that FIT works with, you know, taking into account women's empowerment, economic empowerment, what was the status within and cultural beliefs within in regard to women's economic equality, which also brought into discussions about gender equality, and from the innovative aspect of it, I think that also having, for us, very much approaching it from a community-led perspective and not going in with a tightly designed program, but allowing there to be flexibility in regard to hearing from the cultural leaders or the religious leaders, and but then designing it so that, and taking a look at what was on the ground already. So what, you know, the jump off point, what tools do we have that we could actually adopt, or what organizations could we work with, like youth savings and loans programs or women's savings and loans programs or other NGOs that may have had similar programs that we could adopt or adapt to, but then to build on that. And I just wanted to say, and I think Felix will speak more to this in regard to, this wasn't our first project within that particular community. And I think that was really vital in building that trust and relationship building, so that when we came in with a different model to test, the first was about, you know, the educational aspect, but then it was like, how can we build something sustainable that is market-based, that is going to enhance the livelihood of women within the community? And then so building on those relationships and building a project and the tools that we used around that. So I'm going to let Felix speak, as he was, you know, project manager and on the ground in Adjumani throughout the entire project. And so take it away, Felix, please.
Thank you. Just like Lisa has mentioned, major part of our success was because of about a few things. One is having a review of the existing projects, those that had been done by our other partners, finding out what could have had them fail and what we think were their potentials to have achieved the project. So before we set foot to go and work in Adjumani, we had lots of partners to work with talk with and meet up with, and these were including cultural leaders that were so influential on the ground, because there is no way you'd go to a community without having to have the influence of the cultural leaders and the husbands of these women, and of course the brother and relatives of these girls. So essentially the cultural leaders were very important, and our partners that were already running similar projects in the field. Not forgetting, we were tapping into the experiences of the male circles. Our partner CARE had so many male involvement groups that were already formed, but didn't have a lot of information about MHM. So when we partnered with the same groups, we were able to have them take in our information, learn more about menstrual hygiene management, and of course the product. And so these were influential to influence the behaviors of the men in terms of allowing their women do business, allowing the women supplement their financial status in homes. So this was very key. I want to expound more on the role of our toll-free. We installed the toll-free where community members were able to call in and ask questions that they were unable to have shared during our radio program, because we had radio programs that would generally speak about menstrual hygiene management and the product. But the toll-free was influential to take in personal calls from those that thought would call at a free cost and go deeper into their issues of MHM. Not forgetting that in cultures within Adjumani and Africa in general, issues of MHM or menstrual hygiene are never talked about in the open. So this gave us a forum to, first of all, expound more about menstruation on radio, and then have a toll-free as a fallback position for those that thought were not as brave to talk about their personal issues with menstruation. So a toll-free also came in handy to have the girls speak out. Even those that wouldn't want to share issues with their husbands would instead find a phone and talk privately every hour after work or when they thought they had privacy. I want to hint more on the role of cultural leaders. Just like I mentioned, the culture where it was a taboo for women who are menstruating to cook and prepare food during menstruation. So we had to, first of all, have the cultural leaders meet us with us, be part of our trainings, let them know that this was a myth, this was the so-called taboo was a myth. So when we had them come on board and appreciate our information, they were so influential coming on radio programs to further expound more on the need of this information. This was important that the boys and the men had to pick from the cultural leaders and take on our information. So this has been very, very influential for the project as part of our innovativeness. Lisa needed to expound more on the role of the skilling and of the savings groups. We found these groups, the community had trainings in our system called VSLA, Village Savings Loan Associations, where women would be grouped, and they were supposed to have something to share in these groups each day of their meeting. They were supposed to have a share of profits after having made a sale. So these groups didn't have what to sell to have profits for these group meetings. So our product, the menstrual cup, came in handy that the women had to now embrace the product, go sell, and have a profit for their VSLA group meetings. So VSLA is majorly for a group of women that meet under a tree shade every identified day, that Friday or Sunday or a weekend. But then we had a smaller component of the YSLAs, the young girls, because menstrual hygiene issues are more compounded with the young girls as opposed to the elder women. So part of the VSLAs was split into the YSLA, the young girls and young boys. So these came out of the bigger set of the VSLAs. So these ones is where we drew our champions from. And our champions were now the sales team, the marketing team in the communities. It had a mixture of boys, and then the majority were the young girls. So the boys served as an example to the rest of the other boys in the community that you can do better. because our findings did show in the initial reports so far before the project start was that the men and the boys were part of reasons why girls were dropping out of school. The shame that comes with sitting next to a boy in class when you're menstruating, or having a boy remind you that, excuse me, you're waiting your seat. So girls would fear to go to school for all that time when they're menstruating. So when you empower the boys with information, they're able to see it normal, that menstruation is part of the day-to-day lives of the girls and the mothers in homes. So it was important that we emphasize more having the boys as part of our champions. So the boys were, actually, when you look at the marketing sales, boys sold more than the girls. The information, people preferred having this information more from the boys as opposed to the girls, because they assume the girls is a normal thing for girls to speak about this. But when we had the boys come on board, a lot more questions came during the toll-free calls, came from the men and the boys wanting to find out if it is true what they had been pushing the girls to was that painful, and what more they could do to support the girls and the women during menstruation. So these are part of what we discovered.
It was interesting in regard to, and this is something we were discussing just yesterday, the assumption we, came with, which, so much for assumptions, that typically, because we were working with a population that were refugees as well as host community. So was this the right community for us to do this test? We did have refugees who participated as champions. So they were trained in menstrual health management, but also in regard to, of course, selling, financial literacy, entrepreneurialism, and selling. The assumption was that because they are supplied with free pads monthly or every 3 months, I believe, that given the choice between a free pad, or a cup, or buying a cup and paying for the cup, we were surprised to see that the cup was the preference. And that certainly crossed out our assumption that they would go with the free product. And the assumption that we're now thinking is that it's because it is a free product. Was it of lesser quality? Is something that I purchase have a higher quality? So brings into this, marketability of something, and that people really do want to have the opportunity to purchase. But it also brings in the opportunity for choice. So I'm always of the belief that giving people purchasing power improves their choices. I'm not just, do I have to settle with what's coming to me for free, or do I have the opportunity, if I'm going to purchase, A, B, or C, I have now the choice to decide. And the other aspect, of course, pads are well known in this particular area. They're not the highest quality. They cause chafing, and it's a very hot environment, so they're not preferable. So it was interesting to see the early and excited adoption of using a cup, buying a cup, and the acceptance of that in the community, but also from the livelihood aspect of it. And I think there was, from an entrepreneurial perspective, Felix, you can speak to that in regard to, the savings from this that went into the savings and loans programs, the interest that they had, garnered from these sales, and some other entrepreneurial ventures that started as an offshoot from our innovation. And I don't want to take up all the time here in regard to Enid. Does that speak? Okay.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Felix. Yeah, that you've really provided us with a lot of context about your innovation, so much rich information, from just involving the local leaders to hearing their voices on the issue of menstrual health and hygiene, and just making it an innovation that everyone in the community is taking part, and just also trying to get rid of all those negative cultural connotations that come with menstrual health and hygiene. So thank you so much for that. And we will circle back to you and hear more about your innovation. For now, I'll move on to Olivia from Canadian Physicians for Aid and Relief Malawi. Olivia, same question for you. If you could provide us with a bit of a brief overview about your innovation and what makes it innovative in the context that you're working in?
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Olivia, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. I was trying to do a video at the beginning, but looks like it's not coming. So anyway, my name is Olivia Kachoma. I'm working with the Canadian Physicians for Aid and Relief in Malawi. We implemented a project that was called Freedom to Learn for Girls in Rural Malawi, mainly addressing the menstruation barrier. The goal of this project, we wanted to decrease absenteeism of adolescent girls, which was very common in the area where we are working. Noting from the class registers, we noted that girls' enrollment from standard 3 or grade 3 kept on dropping as the grades or the classes were going up. So that was the issue. And what innovation did we bring in? Yes, some of what I'm going to say is going to concur with what Elisa and Felix said. For us, we piloted this project using menstrual cups and reusable menstrual pads. This was an innovation because otherwise the girls, they use just local clothes that they get from their moms, their aunts, and then it doesn't last long. So when they are menstruating, it means they have to miss either 3 or 5 days a month, because the local cloth could not hold them for the entire time they are supposed to be at school. For menstrual cups, this was entirely a new thing in the area, and we are glad that the project introduced it, because by the end of the project, the girls preferred it because they didn't have to go back home to change. Another innovation is that we involved both boys at the schools, the fathers, the local leaders, and the entire community. Just as Felix alluded to earlier on, menstrual issues, it's like a taboo. They are rarely spoken about in the communities. So we had to break that myth, and spoke to the parents as well as the boys that it's normal, it's part of the other gender. They have to support the girls. At first, it's like they were like, really? But as we are introducing and we are engaging them, they came to understand the concept, and that worked so well. Another part of the project that involved innovation is that the project provided skills to the girls. As you can see in the background pictures, those girls were taught how to make reusable pads, such that even after the project closed up, they are still making that. So it means they will still be able to use it. Unlike in the past, where those who could afford to buy the disposable pads, it means it was just a once-off thing. But this time they've got the skills that they are going to use for the rest of their lives. Another part of the component that was involved innovation, we did health education talks to both boys at school, pre-adolescent girls, as well as we deliberately engaged the male teachers as well as some female teachers to be as role models to the girls. So these education talks, the boys, they were introduced to say it's not right to bully a girl if she spoils her clothes, or maybe she's showing that maybe she's doing her menstruation. It's not proper, it's not right. If anything, you have to support that girl, because in that way, you are also promoting her to continue with her education. And for the pre-adolescent girls, it was just like letting them know what is coming ahead of them. And the teachers, indeed, they were encouraged to continue supporting the girls so that once a girl is doing her menstruation, she should be able to approach a teacher, and the reusable pads that they are sewing, some are kept at the school, because sometimes a girl can start her period while at school. Then she should be able to approach this teacher and say, hey teacher, I need a reusable pad to use. So that's the innovation part that we did. And let me also just say that as we are implementing these, there were some cultural barriers that we are trying to address. So these innovations addressed a number of cultural barriers which were there in the community, but thanks to the project, that by the end of the project, these things they are minimized. I've talked about the cultural beliefs that it was a taboo to speak about menstruation. So this is a deep-seated cultural thing where rarely a father can talk about menstrual issues of their daughters. But this, we broke through the health education talks that we are doing. Again, there was a lack of peer-to-peer communication. Like even a girl couldn't approach a boy, a girl couldn't approach even their female teachers, but that we tried to say, no, this is not the way to go. And again, the share lack that there was inadequate materials that the girls could use while they are doing their menstruation, and the introduction of the model teachers whom they will continue engaging with the girls, with the boys, even after the project. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Let me just also highlight like that what after all doing all this, we found out that the absenteeism of the in class by the girls has dropped to 14% from 70% when we were starting the project. We carried out a baseline before we started the project, and the absenteeism of the girls was at 70%, but in less than a year that the project was implemented, that dropped to 14%. That's a very remarkable thing. And we could even see even the teachers, they are saying this is a good project, because no girl now like say, I will not go to school because I'm menstruating. They have the materials that they are using. Also, the girls liked the menstrual cups. As when we were starting the project, none was using it, it was 0%. But as we are winding the project, that was 18%. So those that received the menstrual cups, they were able to use it. Again, use of reusable sanitary pads also increased from 26% at baseline to 83% by the end of the project. So that's another remarkable thing. And the, again, we got feedback from the girls that 96% said they are no longer affected by their period to miss classes. That's a very good achievement, because otherwise, as I said at the very beginning, there was a lot of absenteeism during menstruation period. And the project also managed to increase the access to reusable pads from 26% at baseline to 83% by the end of the project. And on average, each of the adolescent girls had 5 reusable pads. So this is the minimum requirement that the Minister of Education here in Malawi says. So we can say that's very good that the project supported them. And indeed, as they are using this, we can see that even girls' attendance in schools has increased. So that's what I can say about the innovation that we implemented here in Malawi. Thank you so much, and over to you, Enid.
Thank you, Olivia, for sharing. And as you mentioned, I'm hearing a bit of that similarity in involving local leaders, in engaging boys and men within that discussion to be able to address the menstrual barriers that are there in the communities. And just that a rich piece of also just being able to collaborate with women and girls in the community for them to be able to make their own reusable pads. Thank you so much for sharing, Olivia. And we'll go over to Lindy and Majo. And that is, I'm just going to ask the same question to you, that if you can provide us a bit of context on what your innovative solution was and what made it innovative in the context that you were working in.
Okay, I'll speak to this one. My name is Lindy, and Majo, my partner at Girls of Tomorrow Foundation, is also on this call. You'll probably see her later. I think her video is off right now. So our innovative solution was connecting three seemingly separate areas into one program to increase menstrual empowerment, support, and reduce school absenteeism due to menstruation. So our program was called Female-Centered Permaculture Gardens. And what that is at each school site, we created a garden where in the garden, the plants that we were growing were grown with purpose to support a female through her, like the different stages of her menstrual cycle. So an example would be ginger. We grew ginger in the gardens, and boys learned alongside girls how to utilize ginger to support the female menstrual process. So ginger is a very strong anti-inflammatory. It reduces cramping. So ginger would be a plant that you can use during the active menstrual period when somebody might be experiencing cramping. So we taught program participants how to grow the plant in a permaculture way using organic and permaculture gardening techniques, and girls and boys alongside each other were actively involved in creating the garden and learning to manage and care for the garden. And then we learned what each herb does for the female body. And we also included some things for what herbs did for the male body. And then we learned practical skills on how to utilize the herbs to do these things. So for example, the ginger, we would cut up ginger, show about how much ginger makes an effective ginger tea to reduce cramping. So in this program, we connected herbology, nutrition, organic gardening skills, and female menstrual anatomy, learning about the menstrual process through this integrative practical experience. And in that process, we were trying to see, would these female-centered permaculture gardens, would they increase menstrual support from parents, teachers, and then the boys to the girls, and then the girl students to the girl students as well? And then would we also have a reduction of the amount of school that was missed from girls? So female students being more comfortable to come to school while they're menstruating. And then we were also seeing if we could change the frame of menstrual stigma into almost like a menstrual celebration, like what are the positive things about menstruating and about being female? So this garden was almost like a celebratory place for the female body where boys and girls were involved together in its creation. And this garden space was meant to hold care for the female. And it was great fun, and we had a lot of success in this project. So we were really happy for this opportunity from FIT to carry out this innovative idea. Yeah, I think that's a brief introduction. That's all I've got. If you have questions, feel free. I can answer questions.
Thank you so much, Lindy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so we will move on, and I've heard just a lot of great things that you've mentioned there. I love how you just mentioned that those gardens were a space to celebrate women, to celebrate menstruation, and bringing that as a piece to just bring everyone together in the community, boys, the teachers, to be able to learn about the menstrual cycle and even just the different foods that actually help women during their menstrual cycle. So thank you so much for sharing that. So we heard from all the three organizations, and if we really take a close look, all of these three innovations are not only providing like a long-term solutions to accessing menstrual products, they are also just breaking down those social barriers and taboos that exist within the different communities, and additionally also reducing the number of pads that end up in landfills. So I'm going to just ask each of you to speak about your innovation and how it is contributing to environmental sustainability. So I'll start off with Lindy and Majo. Lindy, you mentioned that you're using one of the key things in your innovations was the permaculture gardens. Maybe you could start off by just explaining to our audience, like for people who don't understand, what is a permaculture garden, and then maybe you can dive deeper. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So permaculture, it was actually it was invented by a guy named Bill Mollison in Australia, but traditional societies have been doing things that are akin to permaculture for ages. So permaculture means permanent agriculture. So there's a lot of perennial plants that you're growing in permaculture gardens. So in our female menstrual gardens, we had a lot of like trees. So one example of that was the green heart tree, and the green heart tree leaves and bark were traditionally used in Uganda to help stabilize the hormones. So permaculture is a system where you are using what available local materials you have and what native plants you have around to create sustaining forest gardens. Essentially, that would be kind of the apex of permaculture, where you have a system that you've created, you've done earthworks, you've planned for water retention so that you can mitigate the effects of climate change through a landscape that's designed to have what it needs, where it needs it, to allow for abundance, essentially. So in our gardens, we did use fertilizers, but the fertilizers were not synthetic. They were from things like manure, or they were from things like leaf litter. So it's using what local resources are available to add to an abundance, a permanent abundance of a garden space. Majo, do you have something you would like to share about the permaculture gardens?
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you, Lindy. Thank you for your introduction and what you have shared so far. Well, the permaculture gardens, we were considering not only trees, but we also added in the herbs and other plants that could be helpful for the girls during their menstruation. Also, each plant that was planted, we had to share it with the girls, how it is planted, the permaculture part of it, the health part of it, and then the menstrual part of it. So we didn't only consider permaculture, we had to add other elements like our project. It was, I'll give an example of sour soap. Sour soap, when we are planting it, we had to show the girls that if it grows, it takes this period of time to grow, and this is how we have to plant it. And if you plant it, this is how you use it. And we also show how it's useful to the environment, especially the soil, and what it adds into the soil. And I'll go briefly to talk about moringa. Moringa as a tree, it was selected, and when we were planting it, we had to show them how it looks like, especially during the nursery, what spacing is needed when we are planting it, and what it adds. For example, it adds I'll leave Lindy to talk about the part of what it adds in the soil, but I'm sure moringa is hopeful in the soil, and we have to consider all the things that it adds to the soil and what it adds to our bodies and how it's hopeful to us during menstruation. So that's what I can briefly talk about, and I'll leave Lindy maybe to add more on that.
Thanks, Majo. Yeah, I think it's an important part Majo just brought up about the soil. So in permaculture, you're wanting to plant plants that like a variety of plants. So you're wanting to increase biodiversity, which of course is good for our world during climate change. So permaculture gardens, it's called a guild. So there'll be like one tree in the middle, and then you plant herbs and it can be annual plants too around the tree. And the tree, for example, like if it's part of the pea family, it will be bringing nitrogen into the soil. And then you'll have herbs that maybe need a lot of nitrogen, and banana trees. So if they're taking a lot of nitrogen and potassium, they'll need that thing to support its growth. And then you're adding a biodiversity of plants in these gardens so that it's good for insects and good for climate change and good for ensuring that during climate change, say, for example, one crop fails, you have a whole bunch of other crops that then you can divert to. And then it was good for the health aspect in that it's not like, oh, okay, ginger, that's the only thing you can use for cramps. No, because maybe that doesn't work for some person's body and it does for another. So we were using a variety of crops and a variety of plants and herbs in our lessons, and maybe 3 things did the same thing, but maybe a girl would experiment with herself knowing, oh yeah, actually this plant is the one that works best for my body for cramps. So the diversity is definitely environmentally good, and then also good for a woman to have options of how to care for her own body. And then nutritionally as well, that variety in the diet is really important for health. And it's interesting, like, for example, the banana tree. The banana tree, we used, again, this like local material that we were growing through the support of the diversity of crops that we were growing to support the banana tree's growth, and the waterworks that we used to ensure that the banana had enough water to grow. So with that banana tree, after the harvest of the bananas, the tree would be chopped down, and some of it was used for mulch, for water retention of the space to ensure that the landscape didn't have soil erosion. But we also used the banana stalk to create our menstrual pads. So girls had access to learning how to use local materials to create something that was needed. So we had the the stalk of the banana tree that was dried and chopped, and it was the filler of the menstrual pads. And this project was actually the first time we experimented with that, and it went really, really well. And we had good feedback. And that was the empowerment point of this project, was what's around you and what can we use that's environmentally sound and that also can support female health in general.
Thank you so much, Majo and Lindy. And yeah, thank you for just bringing all this rich knowledge. Now we know about permaculture gardens. Who knows? It's summer starting here, and we might just each start our own little permaculture gardens.
That would be great.
Yeah, and I guess something that I just also want to point out, like that key aspect of you using the natural materials in the environment to make the reusable pads. I think I found that very interesting that with doing that as well, those pads are also compostable. So
Totally.
you're not causing any harm to the environment. So yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing. And we'll move on now to hear from Felix and Lisa on your innovation and how it is environmentally sustainable. So over to you, Felix and Lisa. You're on mute.
Unmute. There we go.
there
Thank
we
you again, Annette and Lindy. That was really interesting. Many really fascinating points there in regard to getting away from monocultures, number one, but really looking at what's going on the ground and in Malawi in regard to going back to indigenous growth and permaculture. So in regard to the environment, it's been sort of central for us in the development of our Be-Free cup, very specifically wanting to move away from the single-use plastic-based pads and tampons that are used so readily here, well, globally actually, and the fact that so many end up in landfill of these single-use products land up in landfill that can take upwards of 200 to 800 years to decompose under normal landfill conditions. So, some of the statistics, of the United States, you're looking at over 20,000 billion tons of single product, menstrual product that go to landfill every single year. And the reality is this is bio waste. This is really waste that's meant to go to an incinerator and be properly incinerated. But you have to look at the value chain of where the plastics, where they come from first, in the manufacturing all the way through to their use. And then, so, I always think of like cradle to death, but for us, it's thinking more in the philosophy of cradle to cradle. It's developing something that's going to be reusable, be a healthier choice, be a more comfortable choice, but, healthier for the female body, the environment, our internal environment, as well as our external environment. So for us, it was, looking at saving water, everything from when we're manufacturing it, but also because the Be-Free cup in regard to our innovation and that it doesn't require boiling and it doesn't require water to wash. So it just has to be cleaned. And just some of the statistics that we've, that measurements is that we've saved about 185,000 liters of water, since we've started producing and delivering, the Be-Free cup. Also diverted 1.2 million single-use products from that landfill, those which I think, speaks volumes in regard to, a product that you don't have to go back to the pharmacy every single month. And all of the other aspects of that, driving to the pharmacy, parking at the pharmacy, or the store, or the shopping center, and the packaging that's around it. It's so compounded in regard to the environment. But we also think about the environment and the sort of micro environments of a school environment, a playground where, in one of the schools that we did an earlier project, Pagarinya, and Endelele, looking at the latrines and the schoolmaster speaking to us about these disposable products. They really are meant to be incinerated, but neither of those schools had incinerators, proper incinerators. So what was happening was that they were being burnt if they were not put in the latrine, which is not great for the latrine because they fill up so quickly. And the equipment that comes in to empty the latrine were breaking consistently. So the cost of that, so they just stopped coming in to empty the latrines. It was a consistent problem that was like one of the key points that the schoolmasters had brought up. So within a community, where do you put your disposed single-use products? So I keep going back to, the incinerator is really the proper way for it to be incinerated, but they were being burned in open pit. And those open pit, because they're plastic based, those polymers being burned off and going into the environment is terrible. These volatile organic compounds that are released when you burn these products. So, I always think of it as a manufacturer, as a product developer, thinking about the entire value chain, so that all the way to the end, from the environment, as well as to the impact and the effects that it has on the individual body, but also on micro ecosystems within a school environment or a town. Or Felix, anything that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, just one small point. There were fears in the beginning on how much water would be needed. Remember, Jumani district has bigger issues of water. There is no water. So the issues were, if we're struggling to have enough water to wash reusable pads, how about cleaning the cups? So this innovation came handy in such a way that they didn't have to require so much water, one, to wash the cup, apart from just having just a little for them to keep their hands safe from that before they can change and insert the caps. This was important. The other was there were so many stressing factors that clients, that the girls mentioned, of infections with the use of the reusable pads. They had been given free pads, but nobody had information on how to treat the infections. How do you stop infection? So with the CAP and the team that was on the ground to emphasize how to keep safe while using these products came in handy to bring an end to all the issues of infections. Because the worries were we already have infections with the reusable pads, either because they are not put out to dry enough, because they still have shame on being seen washing blood off a pad. So the girls would wash the pads, but then hide them under mattresses because it's embarrassing to see you reusing a pad. So with the coming of a CAP, those issues were hinted about, and solutions were given for both those that still had fears to change to a CAP, and those that prefer to remain with the reusable pad were sensitized on how they can simply switch from one product to another with the issues of water and infection. So this was part of what we left out as innovations. And this needed to emphasize a lot of questions on how long one has to stay with a CAP as opposed to other products. And we say you don't have to worry so much on the cost of having to keep buying the CAP or other products. With a CAP, you are assured of having this same CAP for a long period of time, that you will have to save lots of money that you should have been used to going to shop to keep buying parts, lining up, and all that stress that comes with other menstrual products. So this, I think, was what was bought in, and men were eager and quick to buy the product and support the girls, because this saved the money for homes. Money meant to pay fees, money meant to buy a meal home would now be saved with the coming of a CAP. So when we use this strategy to let them buy into the CAP, this worked miracles. And not forgetting to mention that much as the project was intended for Ugandan community at the district borders in other country, we had lots of demand from the neighboring country wanting to come and buy into the CAP and take it to another country. So that's came in because we were sharing the border.
There was pride as well in regard to the environment. I have a cleaner school property. So speaking about the environment and the awareness of your environment, like who given the choice to have a cleaner school environment, and playgrounds. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Felix and Lisa. And I think, I believe maybe the lifespan of the Be-Free Cup is 10 years. If, I don't know, you can confirm that. That's correct. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing how your innovation has also considered the environment, not only just the external environment, but also the internal environment of women's health. And I'm going to move on now to Olivia from SEPA. The same question for you. How is your innovation taken into consideration, like the environment?
Okay, thank you so much, Eneti and Lindy and Lisa, Felix, for sharing those points. Yes, for us too, we included the environment. The project was implemented in primary schools. So it's in a rural area. There are no incinerators at the schools. So which means the single-use disposable pads, they were either disposed at landfills or in pit latrines at the school. So imagine a single-use disposable pad, maybe on average, a girl can change twice. Maybe let's say like she menstruates 4 days in a week, just an example. That's like 8 per girl, and we don't know how many are doing that. So it means the latrines were filling fast. There are no vehicles that could do this. It means they had to dig, like close that pit, it's full, and dig another pit latrine. By digging, it means they are disturbing the soil. That can also lead to soil erosion. So that's already like disturbing the environment. And there are no change rooms at the primary schools where we implemented this. So it was really a challenge. But coming in with the menstrual cups and the reusable pads, it means there's no need for frequent changing, as the girls reported they could be with these for all the time they're at school. So it means they are no longer like disposing pit latrines or landfills. So in that way, the environment has been preserved, and it's really life-changing innovation, life-changing project, even because at the schools, it means they don't have to frequently dig the pit latrines. Again, just to add, the pits where they are constructing the upper structure for the pit latrines, the schools had to hire diggers, someone to dig the pits. It means they had to pay the school. It means that money is now saved. They can use to buy other things for the school, like chalk that they can use to write on the boards, maybe textbooks and some other things for the school. So that's another positive part that the project has brought in, and has also saved on the environment. That's all that I can share. Thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you, Olivia, for just sharing about how your innovation is also taking into consideration the environment with the use of the reusable pads that do not require to be thrown out as frequently as the single use, as well as the menstrual cup. At this point, we will move on to seeing if we have any questions from the audience. You may ask your questions, you may raise your hand to just ask your question verbally, or you can put your questions in the chat function. So yeah, if there are any questions from the audience.
Perhaps I can jump in with one, and folks, please do share any questions or comments to the presenters by either raising your hand or using the chat. But just to start off for our presenters, I'm wondering if there are any key results or interesting learnings from your testing that were surprising to you or unique that you can share with us today. So perhaps we can start with Lindy and Majo, if you have any results that were surprising that you'd like to share. We wrote the N-line report and now that's like out of my head. Let me think. Majo, what do you think? Are there any things that we were surprised by? Yeah,
Hello.
Hi.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank you for the time you've given us to share about our innovative projects. So one of the things that I would like to share is the fact that when we completed the project, or when we are completing the project, some of the students, new students who had joined the schools that we are training, because when we are working on the project, we are concentrating on students who were in senior 1 and senior 2s, and these students have shifted from senior 1 now to senior 2, and senior 2 now to senior 3. So we find ourselves in a state where we have new students who would like to be part of the trainings because they had never seen a project where you're training about herbology and connecting it with menstruation. So it was new to them, and some of them were seeing these herbs, but they didn't know how to use them and how helpful were the herbs to their lives. And another thing that I can talk about is the fact that men were involved, especially in making pads using the hands. And knew how to sew, and we are surprised, what should we do, how should we fix this, and now it is a girl boy discussion and trying to help one another on how maybe make a pad. And one of the boys in fact said, I'm now making a pad for my sister, and now I will be the one to show to make
Majo,
Then another thing I would love to talk about is the parts, but we involve training. First of all, we train them. How can you maybe use? Sorry, hello,
you were just cutting out, but you're back. That's good.
hello.
We can
I
hear
can
you now.
we can hear you now.
Yeah, I think what Majo said about the boys being involved, that was kind of a surprising result.
Hello. Okay, so another thing I would love to share is when
So I think the internet went off. But what Majo was saying about how the boys were involved in the making of the pads, that was designed into our project. But I think what was interesting, I'm looking at our PMF here, and at the beginning, we had, we actually decided to add a testing area. So in our midline results, we saw that 31% of boys said that they were comfortable talking to girls about menstruation. And actually by the end of the project, it was 90% of boys said that they were comfortable and confident to talk to females about menstruation. And that was surprising because when I think about even like in Canadian schools, I do not think 90% of boys are comfortable talking to girls about menstruation. So I felt that was a very big percent, and that was a question we added because that was an area that we saw a bigger increase than suspected. Like we had always planned to educate boys alongside girls, but we didn't know how much boys would take on this responsibility and this role of caring and wanting to be involved. So that was great. And I think that speaks to, the fact that this topic, like female health and menstruation, it's not just the issue for developing countries. Like this is I'm in the Yukon, and in schools in the Yukon, this program is very applicable. Like this, to have a 90% amount of boys saying that they're comfortable and able to support females in menstruation is huge. So that was definitely a surprise.
Thank you so much, Lindy. So we have another question, and I guess once again, feel free to be able to just raise your hand and you can ask your question directly. So there is a question from Jacqueline, and it reads, for the projects using educational empowerment programs for youth, how did you approach proposing your project to community stakeholders when there is such a high cultural stigma against speaking about menstruation? Was it difficult to gain consent for hosting these talks or sessions, for example, at schools? And how did you approach the social cultural stigmas when speaking acceptance of your projects from different stakeholders? So maybe I'll start off with maybe Olivia, if you could speak to this.
Okay, thank you so much, Annette. Yeah, so what we did for us, we used different stages. At first, we engaged the local leaders from the communities surrounding all the 4 schools and shared with them the project so that they understand. From there, we moved to the second level of groups, which is the committees at the schools. We have parent-teacher associations and school management committees. In both of these committees, their parents they are selected. These are government-approved local structures that support the schools. So they include both parents as well as the teachers. Then we emphasize to them the point why girls need to be supported during their menstruation. And then we moved on to third level, whereby now we engaged the villages surrounding the schools, like now the parents, the guardians surrounding each school. So because we had started at the like a higher level where we involved all the local leaders, like the village chiefs, they understood the importance of it. And then we moved to the school committees, they understood the importance of it. And when we came to the village level, where now it's like the masses, it was not easy. I mean, it was not difficult to share with them because the higher groups, they had already understood. And when we were engaging the villages, we used like drama, whereby we had like coached these committee members that we were already engaged in this project. Like, okay, so maybe one committee member would will act like preventing their child to go to school, and then the other committee member will be asking, why are you doing that? No, because she's menstruating. She's not supposed to be near her colleagues. She will be laughed at school. Now the other one will be saying, no, that's not good. And then you would ask the audience, do you think what this parent did to her child is right or wrong? Then the audience, no, that's not good. Others will say, no, it's fine. And then there will be that debate. So it was participatory. And then in the end, everyone will come to a conclusion, no, it's not good to ask a girl to stay at home during her menstruation. That's not right. You are like abusing her. You are not doing her favor. That's not right. She has a right to go to school. Menstruation is part of her life, all that. So they were able to understand and they would debate, and it was so nice. And in the end, everyone would come to a conclusion. So that's how we approached it. We did it in 3 levels. When we were doing it at the schools, it was the same thing. So the head teacher, who is like the head for the school, and the teachers, they were oriented on the project, and then, yes, they said, okay, now we can involve the pupils, and especially the boys, because usually they were the boys who were bullying the girls. And we did like, they were asked the questions to say, okay, so what signs do you see that this girl is now an adolescent? And then they will say, no, they will be soiling their school uniform. They will be like laughing. Then the facilitator would ask, is it right to laugh at a girl when she has soiled her clothes? Then we say, at first they'll say, yeah, what do then amongst themselves they say, no, I don't think it's right. You know, like we are bullying this girl, we are victimizing these girls. No, I don't think it's right. What if they were our sisters? Would we do that? Then they'll be debating amongst themselves. And in the end, they'll come to a conclusion that no, that's not right. And indeed, by the time we are finishing the project, the boys that were oriented on this, they had formed clubs, and they are championing girl education amongst themselves. So while we trained a few, now they are escalating and they're even continuing to champion girl education, that no boy should be found bullying a girl. So that's how we approached it here in Malawi. Thank you so much, Annette.
Thank you, Olivia. And we have another question here, and I'll just maybe just paraphrase it. So this is from Bernard, and Bernard's home country is Sierra Leone. And Bernard is just wondering how you would have like sensitized the girls to start using a new product. So Lisa and Felix, how have you sensitized people to actually accept a menstrual cup? Because that's a bit of in a way, that could be a bit of a stretch. I mean, there is in a lot of communities that taboo, that, connotation that you do not insert anything into the vagina. So bringing that in a context where you were working in, where it was also a host country for a community for refugees, like how did you go about bringing that, introducing that product and having the uptake from the people. You're on mute, Lisa.
And thank you again. And Bernard, thank you for your question, because that's really, is the perceived barriers that you may come across in regard to introducing a new product, that we come with our perceptions of like, oh, people, they're not going to want to insert something, or, that first initial reaction to something. It's about delivering in a very sensitive way and talking about menstruation. Menstruation is normal, it's healthy, it shouldn't be pathologized unless there's, endometriosis or pain and these things. But outside of that, it's a sign of health. And the importance of it being understood and the knowledge transfer first. In working with any communities or within any particular country, like, of course, you have to speak with your stakeholders and your different levels of government, involving them in the conversation, your public health people, your cultural leaders, your religious leaders. And, when we approach the education, not just jumping into menstruation as a menstrual cycle. We don't just talk about the period. There's so much more than, it's a full life from menarche to menopause, and the various stages in one's life, and what is healthy, what might be a sign that isn't healthy. We talk about everything from like discharge, what is normal, what is non-normal, and doing this in a fun, using edutainment, using storytelling. So many of the girls want to get up and tell their story about their first period and the misunderstandings they had, and now they have the knowledge and sharing. So it builds on relationship building, it builds on knowledge building. We actually start with puberty. So we train the boys and teach the boys about puberty and what they're going through, so they have an understanding. But when girls and boys are going through puberty, they've just gone from playing together in the playground, and then all of a sudden there's this major shift, and wanting to have the understanding of like, why do I feel so different? The girls are feeling different, the boys are so the understanding of what each of is going through is part of like the basis of our education. Like, let's enter into adolescence with this knowledge of what puberty really is, what's going on with your body, so that there's body literacy from both the girls and the boys, and the girls understand, from the perspective of this respective genders. So, and in regard to using pads, or there's an internet out there, so people have access to like, what else can I use, or what's more comfortable. We can actually speak to it from a health perspective, and looking at the incidence of, let's say, bacterial vaginosis, which is quite high with traditional products. And these are realities that girls are experiencing on the ground. So from disposable pads to reusable pads, there's been enough research and data out there that we can draw from that says there is an increase in bacterial vaginosis with the use of certain products if they're not used properly, if it reusable is not washed properly. There's chafing, so these are health outcomes that are realities, that when people become aware of it, it broadens the conversation of what other alternatives do we have, and what research is out there to support that. The vagina is actually not internal anatomically. It's not like, you can go up and you can reach inside your stomach. So again, the knowledge, in a sensitizing with knowledge, and being very patient and answering questions, and speaking to the realities of data supporting that there's a decrease in infections, vaginal infections, with the use of menstrual cups, which invariably affect the incidence of HIV and STIs and infertility issues. So, we're talking about it from a health perspective, but also, so coming in with, and it's building on the knowledge, and building on the knowledge with those, decision makers, from government down through to public health or district health. And, we've worked with, the imams in Adjumani, and just anecdotally, like, the imam purchased a menstrual cup for his wife, and I believe he purchased one for his friend's wife as well. So sometimes we come with our perceptions of like, this is just not going to work in my community. But these are surprises that we were like, oh, that's great. Like, this is wonderful to see that level of acceptance when that knowledge is gained, and that there's better health outcomes from the use of these very high quality products that are rigorously tested, and then now are becoming available.
Yeah, maybe just to cite just a few examples. We had what we called free incentives for people to try and test. And we gave them a chance to test and give feedback before you could roll out the product in the Germany community. We had a media breakfast meeting. Now, this media breakfast meeting had users and people to give testimonies on how they found the cup. So these had old people, mothers who had given birth before. It had school going girls. It had some of our own wives to testify. And these were broadcasted for those that had fears of how do I insert that into, how can I allow my girl to insert this? How is it too big for my girl's vaginal walls? So we had live examples of persons that we had given a product before the start of the project. And these were including religious leaders, political leaders. Even during our radio programs, we had the women member of parliament coming to testify, to draw attention to the girls that, you know what, government might not do so much for you, but we have this product coming on board, try it out. So the influence of key users that had used the product for a period of 3 months gave us a marketing strategy. People had to accept that if a church leader's daughter can use it, if a pastor's wife can use it, if a medical doctor can use it, if his own wife can use it, then who am I? So we had living examples of persons that were doing it. But to draw attention to the local persons in masses, we use what they call flash mobs. Flash mobs had peer champions in communities, those that the girls look up to. It could be a local musician, it could be a nursery teacher, it could be, these were part of the entry, the group that would bring in a community center to dance to the music, to dress up with colors of the cups. So people were excited to see the person they see on TV, they see on radio coming to be part of the entry, and let us speak about a menstrual cup. And in the same for as even the local person in the neighborhood would come and simply use one word, use this product, you won't regret. So these examples gave attention to even those that had fears and would later call and feel free to say, are you sure I can also use it? So probably that could speak to the question asked. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Felix, for providing those really interesting examples to answer Bernard's question. I would just like to follow up, as I know that Olivia and CPAR have used Women's Global Health Innovations Be Free Cups as well in their innovation. So I'm just wondering, Olivia, what was your experience in your project with using these products?
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, as I said at the beginning, menstrual cups had never been used in the areas where we implemented this project. And even the majority of them said, we haven't heard about that. So what we did, we engaged the staff from Ministry of Health, like the nurses, and there was also a partner called Freedom from Fistula, whom we were working together. And we engaged mothers, some selected mothers of the adolescent girls, and then the adolescent girls themselves. So they were oriented, they were trained, and then the cups came together with a leaflet where there were instructions on how to use, how to care of it. And this nurse from Ministry of Health had used it before. So she had the knowledge, personal knowledge, because she had used it. So then she was able to explain to the group, and we didn't have much challenge really, and they were eager to start using it. We were not selling, we were just distributing for free, and the reception was very good. In fact, at the end of the orientation, they would say, why didn't you bring this at the beginning? This is what we have been looking for, you know? So they were very happy because one, it takes long. They don't have to change it frequently, which was a challenge that the girls were experiencing. And secondly, because of the durability, 10 years. So I can have this for 10 years. To them, that was something else. It was news and they were so happy about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I'm just looking at the chat here if there are any more questions. And as I mentioned before, if you have a question, feel free to just raise your hand and you can ask your question verbally. I don't see any questions. Madeline, if there are any, just let me know.
I don't see any additional ones, but I would love to pose the same question to Lindy and Majo. So I'm wondering if you'd like to add anything about how you've approached introducing a new product, or in your case, the fabrication of pads with banana leaves. I'm curious to hear more about that and how you approached that in the communities that you were working with. Hi. So we kind of did this similar situation where we had a group of girls who were not at the schools. So we had, in our project, we had 6 testing sites. One of them was our office, and then 5 of them were schools. So girls who had been involved in programming with Girls of Tomorrow Foundation, who were not part of the schools that we did testing in, they were awesome. And they said that they would test out the banana pad products for us before we started using them in schools. So we also ran kind of this like pilot testing phase. And we've actually, in our regular operations, not this project, but we have like menstrual empowerment programming. And we have done like a similar thing with, we used Diva cups. So I actually just like sent Diva cups from Canada to Uganda. And we had about, I'd say only about 15 sent over. And for leaders and participants in the Girls of Tomorrow Foundation, we had them test out the Diva cups and then share with the group what their experience was, and then share with others. And that's the same thing we did with the banana pads. And we did make a change to the fabric that was on top of the banana pad from what we had originally designed based on the feedback of the girls. So we kind of did this like test, and then we said, okay, yeah, this was getting like satisfactory, good comments from the people who tested it out. And then we implemented it in the schools. And like I was saying earlier in the call, this was the first time Girls of Tomorrow Foundation had made banana fiber pads. So we do look forward to doing more research on that and seeing how this could be the best possible product. But for us, it was kind of that tie-in to the garden with the importance of knowing that, say you don't have a Diva cup, say you don't have a fabric reusable menstrual pad, say you are out in a rural area, your period comes and you need something. And instead of using dirty cloths or something that you know is unhygienic, what can you do? And that was kind of the teaching of using local materials and thinking about the absorbability of plants around you to be able to support in this way. So we kind of were going also for that teaching moment of what are natural alternatives, and maybe there's something better like in the local context than banana fiber. We don't know, but we were trying to invite that type of thinking of like, well, what else other than the kind of traditional known options? Yeah.
To add on to Lindy's, we also use leaders. For example, like me, we had to test it and see we experience it before we extend it to the girls and the parents who are likely to use the pads. So we told leaders to also test the pads that we have created and see how long it takes for the pad to dry if you wash it, and how long it takes to get full. So we also used ourselves as testing, let me say, testing point before we extended the product to the girls and the students. So I'm sure we could, with that approach, it could also have helped us for the girls to embrace the pads and enable us, allow them use the pads too.
Yeah. And then an interesting thing that we have not experimented with that we're kind of interested in or thinking about is they had talked about bacterial vaginosis. So this issue of the best way to dry the reusable pads. And then this is where I'm wondering, like, would using certain soaps, like certain antifungal, antibacterial soaps to wash the menstrual pads, like something like rosemary essential oil or some type of plant that has these natural antibacterial properties in it, does washing reusable pads with something like that lead to less bacterial vaginosis? So there's lots of unexplored areas also that would be interesting to see if this can help any of the products.
Thank you, Maju and Lindy. Yeah, and I mean, there is a lot of work that's still to be done and a lot of exploration. And I definitely look forward to hearing more about what you would have learned in terms of just what are the best ways of actually washing the reusable pads to make sure that they do not cause any other issues. Yeah, so thank you so much to the panelists. This has been a rich discussion, just hearing from all three organizations how you have created spaces within the different communities in Uganda and Malawi for the conversation on menstrual health to be normalized within the different communities, as well as just bringing in that sustainable approach to supporting the menstrual needs for the women and girls in the different communities. Lisa, I can see, do you have a comment? I just saw as if you wanted to comment. Okay.
Oh,
And
I'm doing the poll. It just popped up. So
okay, okay. That's okay. Yeah, so thank you so much once again to all the panelists for sharing the work with us today and the audience for your participation. And the poll has already launched, so we would love to hear your thoughts on this session, and would kindly ask you just to fill it out and share your feedback. If you would like to learn more about the three innovations and other FIT-funded innovations, please visit the FIT website at www.fit-fit.ca, and you can also find the links to the FIT website and social media handles in the chat. We will be sharing the session recording on our platforms this Friday, May 19th, and you are welcome to share this with anyone else who may be interested. Thank you so much once again for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you all. And a pleasure
Thank
to
you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
meet Olivia.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you and have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
That's fine. Good day. Thank you.
Mhm.